Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello and welcome in to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Monday, October 19th. I appreciate you guys listening today. What a weekend of baseball we had. My goodness. Did you guys watch it? Did you watch all 6 of those games I think we've had since we last spoke on Thursday? It was insane. I mean, 2 different Game 7s, ALCS, NLCS, both going the distance. Both include teams coming back from at least a 3-1 deficit, trying to win the entire thing. And, oh, gosh, it was just so fun to watch. Record-setting innings, walk-off home runs, outstanding pitching performances. It had it all if you were a baseball fan. Outstanding performances from guys offensively. It was just an excellent weekend, and then sprinkle in some college football, sprinkle in some NFL, and you had yourselves a heck of a 72-hour window there if you're anything like myself and enjoyed the weekend here. But let's dive into it here today. We got a great show for you. We're going to talk ALCS here in the first segment, then dive into the NLCS, and then wrap up with a World Series preview and giving you guys my predictions, because I've been pretty close. I'll be honest with you. I've been pretty dang close, and starting off with the ALCS, I did take the Astros in 7 going into the series, and then I spoke to you guys at the halfway point when they were down 3-1 or 3-0, and I said, hey, if they win Game 5, this thing's going 7. I mean, I've been around enough high-level baseball, played enough high-level baseball to just kind of understand the ebbs and flows that take place in the postseason. And if you're Tampa, okay, they got Game 4. They're hungry. But if we're able to steal Game 5, if you're Houston, this thing's rolling to 7 just because of the way momentum works and things shift and everything along those lines. And Game 5, this was Thursday night. Oh, man, what a game it was. I mean, it went back and forth. Springer opened it up with a home run. Then Lau answered. Brantley scored a couple of runs. Arozarena homered. He's unbelievable. Then Choi went deep in the 8th inning to tie things up. And before ultimately Carlos Correa, who apparently called his shot to some teammates in the dugout, he went deep to win the game 4-3. And at that point, with the walk-off home run, I said, yep, I nailed that one. There's no shot Houston's winning tomorrow night. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. They won Game 6 7-4. However, it was 7-2 and really wasn't that close until a Margot home run in the bottom of the 8th. He homered in the bottom of the 7th and then again in the bottom of the 8th to get it from 7-1 to 7-4 to make sure Houston used the closer Ryan Presley for his 3rd straight day to make him unavailable for Game 7. Ultimately was not needed because Tampa came out from the jump and just kind of swarmed Houston for Game 7. I mean, Charlie Morton, 5 2/3 innings, no runs, 2 hits, 66 pitches. I thought the guy could go 7-8 innings with the way he was dealing on Saturday night, but Tampa sticks to their guns. They stick to their program, their routine, what they're going with, and I mean, it's worked all year. They're 40-20, and we're up 3-0, but 4-0 at this point in the 6th until Correa scores a couple of runs in the top of the 8th to make it 4-2, but ultimately Houston falls short in 7 games in what was a tremendous series. I mean, oh my goodness. Let's look at some of the box scores from these series on Game 7, and we'll get to the Tampa Bay Rays kind of on the later couple of segments, just because if you guys listened last week, once teams are eliminated, I like to kind of dive in just at the surface level to kind of see how guys performed, what we're looking at next year, what are the initial questions heading into the offseason. We'll get into a much deeper conversation, I'm sure, during the offseason for each individual team and kind of discuss their moves. But just at the top, the Houston Astros, their window is starting to close. And I've seen this up close and personal about a decade to 12 years ago, watching the Philadelphia Phillies. And in 2007, make the playoffs, kind of figure it out, get there. 2008, win the whole thing. 2009, losing the World Series. 2010, losing the League Championship Series. 2011, losing the divisional round. And then you're never back, and it's always one step backwards as you continue down. And that's exactly where Houston is. Winning the World Series, losing in the World Series, now losing in the Championship Series. We go once again into free agency for this next year. Josh Reddick will be a free agent after making $13 million. Michael Brantley will be a free agent after making $16 million. Brad Peacock will be a free agent. And then the big name that everybody knows and possibly the top free agent bat on the market is George Springer. He's just finished up his arbitration coming off a $21 million payday for 2020, and he will be a free agent. So you have Springer leaving, Brantley leaving, Reddick leaving. You got Greinke turning 37. Justin Verlander will miss the entire year due to surgery, and he will be 38 years old. You have Roberto Ozuna potentially having surgery, missing the year. Now it looks like he won't. He got a second opinion. Maybe doesn't need Tommy John surgery. He's going to try to give it a go this offseason, but early on in the year, potentially he has an issue with his arm as he's trying to avoid surgery. So a lot of questions moving forward. A lot of big names could potentially move on. Brantley being the biggest one, and followed by Springer, Reddick. I mean, you guys get. I kind of have Springer as gone. I think somebody's going to pay him a lot of money, and it's not going to be Houston. I think that's kind of the vibe around the market and everywhere. So I'm writing George Springer off. Michael Brantley would have an opportunity to return. Depends on the payday. I think he'd be looking for a very similar 2-year style of deal that he got a couple off seasons ago, 2 for $32. Maybe he's looking for more of a 3 at 45 style of opportunity, try to get the extra length for next year. So a lot to kind of combat. And again, you won't have Verlander, who's the ace of your staff. Zach Greinke can no longer really be counted on as a true number 1 or number 2 moving forward. So you're looking at this rotation, and honestly, a lot of question marks. But in the postseason, you did get some answers, and this is the nice part moving into 2021, is a lot of the kids were able to step up and perform when, honestly, even myself watching wasn't sure it was going to happen. And, we mentioned Zach Greinke. He was dealing with some arm issues, but he's still a very good major league pitcher, but like I said, no longer top tier when it comes to stuff moving forward. He's got 1 year left on his deal at $35 million. It'll be the last year of the 6-year, $206 million deal he signed in Arizona way back when. But other starters, you got Lance McCullers, who struggled a bit in the postseason. In 3 starts, he was 0-2 with a 4.91 ERA. He got hit around a little bit, 16 hits in 14 innings, because his strikeout-to-walk ratio was excellent at 23 strikeouts and only 2 walks. But it was just death by 1,000 paper cuts because 7 home runs and 16 hits, letting guys on and then giving up the long ball. That's troubling when you're trying to keep them in the yard, giving up 7 home runs in only 14 innings in postseason play. So Lance coming off the arm issue into this year. He's now going to have a full off season to try to get back to the top of his game, and I think Houston will anticipate a nice jump of improvement and a nice jump in performance heading into 2021. But a couple of guys that they learned about, one of them was very good, one of them was okay, and that was Framber Valdez. My man was solid in the postseason. 3-1, 1.88 ERA in 3 starts, 24 innings pitched, only 5 runs allowed. He is a bit all over the place, 10 walks in 24 innings, but he certainly showed that he had the stuff to get people out and keep it moving into 2021 and show that, he's going to be a rotation piece. Then you have Jose Urquidy. He was 0-1 with a 4.02 ERA in 15 innings. Okay, is this our guy kind of running into next year? Potentially could be. Then you got Christian Javier, who in the playoffs only came out of the bullpen, but was 2-0 with a 2.89 ERA in 9 innings. He had shown the ability to go multiple innings, and I think they're going to look for him into the rotation next year. And that's really the biggest question marks, because offensively, even though you're going to lose Springer, your leadoff hitter, Brantley, another middle-of-the-order bat, you still have the core returning for at least one more season. I mean, Jose Altuve is on the books for 4 more years through 2024. Same with Alex Bregman. So there's your 1-2 punch in the middle of the lineup, second base, third base. But then your shortstop, Carlos Correa, has 1 more year of arbitration before he becomes a free agent in 2022. Same timeline with Roberto Ozuna. Same timeline with Lance McCullers Jr. Same timeline with Joe Smith, Martin Maldonado. So a lot returning next year, a lot kind of coming to the end of its window, though. But when you look at the salary as a whole, Houston's actually going to have some availability and some opportunity to make some moves, because dollars committed for 2019, looking at it here, was $205 million. So basically right up against that luxury tax, really not a lot of movement. But after losing potential free agents, if they don't sign Brantley, Springer, kind of all of that, it all the way drops down to, with options and arbitration cost, $161.2. So Houston's going to have $40 to $45 million to play with. Now they're going to have to, best utilize that money, and that's where does George Springer getting $30 million a year, $25, $30 million, which only allows you 10 to 15 left to potentially offset the pitching staff? Is that the best use of the $40 million, or is it better to give Michael Brantley 15 instead of George Springer 30? And that way you'll have 30 to distribute to potentially a starter for 15 and then 2 bullpen pieces for 8 and 8. And then that way you have Brantley, a top-end starter, and 2 top-end bullpen pieces instead of George Springer and 1 starting pitcher. It's the conversations that are happening behind the scenes down there in Houston. But, just wrapping up the conversation around the Astros this year, obviously it was them against the world, and the Twitter reaction to them ultimately falling short was, I find it hilarious, just kind of laughing. But honestly, I was one of the few rooting for the Astros. You guys know out there I have some connections to that organization. People have been very kind to me in the past, so I certainly root for them when the occasion presents itself. And I had some fun texting a group of buddies who were, old baseball guys I played with, go Stros, and they all came back with, "Oh my God, I hate them. I hope they lose. I can't believe they're doing this." And during a year where they'd finished under 500, they were coming off the cheating scandal and all the different, circus events that surrounded the Astros over the course of the last 12 months or so. It was just fascinating to kind of see them come together and rally in the postseason. And it was truly one of those experiences that you don't see often, and it's something you certainly don't coach to the younger generation, and that's the ability to flick the switch. We saw Houston because they were tied into that second place seed there in the American League West for the last 2.5, 3 weeks of the regular season. Oakland was pretty firmly entrenched in that number 1 spot, and then behind them, who is it? Seattle, Texas, and the Angels were all not very good. So Houston, for 2.5 weeks, was just showing up at the ballpark knowing, hey, win or lose, if we just kind of go through the motions here, we're going to get this seed. It's going to be the 6th seed. We're going to play the 3 seed, and then we can flick that switch once it comes to postseason time. And that truly was fascinating to see offensively. There were a couple of culprits who really got things going. And, Jose Altuve being one of them, he struggled mightily during the regular season and then ended up hitting .375 with 5 home runs, 11 RBIs in the playoffs. Carlos Correa was excellent in the postseason, .362, 6 home runs, 17 RBIs. Michael Brantley was good, like we talked about, future free agent, .346, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs in the postseason. Let's see, who else hit well? Diaz hit well in 8 games as a fluctuation guy there. Let's see, Maldonado struggled, Reddick struggled, Gurriel really struggled, but Kyle Tucker hitting .306. So Alex Bregman, .220. He was really the only one who couldn't kind of get it going in the postseason out of the big boys because George Springer, with 4 home runs, 10 RBIs, hitting .263. So Springer, Bregman, Altuve, Correa were able to just turn it on in the postseason and carry this team all the way to the ALCS. So finishing under 500, all this crazy stuff, taking it to Game 7. It sure was fun to watch. But that'll wrap it up here for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. The Tampa Bay Rays advanced to the World Series. For you Tampa fans going, hey man, what the heck, talk about us. You guys are going to get the last couple of segments. We're going to preview Rays, Dodgers segments 3 and 4, but right now we'll pause for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we get back, we'll talk about the NLCS, Braves, Dodgers. Game 7 was Sunday night. Did you guys stay up to watch it? I did. It was a fantastic game. So stick around. We're going to talk about it right after this.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Today is Monday, October 19th. I appreciate you guys listening. If you haven't done so yet, check us out on social media. Head to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, GSMC Baseball Podcast. We're keeping you guys up to date on everything that's going on, posting a lot of articles, giving our hot takes on everything during the postseason, live tweeting all the different games. So check us out on there. That's a lot of fun. Share us with your friends. We certainly appreciate it as we continue to try to grow the podcast and spread the word here within the podcast network. But let's dive right back into it. The NLCS, your National League champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. They are able to complete a 3-1 comeback and got a fantastic 4-3 victory last night on Sunday night. An excellent game. It had base running blunders, home runs, swings and momentum. It was just a ton of fun to watch. Atlanta got out to a 2-0 lead early on. LA bounced back. Atlanta took the lead once again. And then a couple of late home runs, pinch hit home run by Hernandez, and then Cody Bellinger in the bottom of the 7th sends LA into the World Series. But how did we get here since we last talked? Thursday night, the Atlanta Braves, they won the game 10-2 to take a 3-1 series lead. Bryce Wilson was fantastic, 6 innings, 1 run. On the flip side, Clayton Kershaw ran into trouble once again as he was extended into the 6th. Ultimately, his line reads 5 innings, 4 runs for the loss in Game 4, and those crickets and chirps got louder and louder for typical postseason Kershaw. Another lame start, huge start. Now they're down 3-1. This series is over. What are they going to do? And they just put their head down and continued to grind, continued to get to work, and slowly but surely were able to complete the comeback. But it wasn't without tense moments if you're a Dodgers fan. I mean, the Braves went up 2-0 in Game 5 before ultimately LA stormed back, made it 7-2 by the 7th inning, and they won that one pretty comfortably on Friday night, I believe it was. And then Saturday night, Game 6, it was a 3-1 final. It was a pitcher's duel. Max Fried did give up the 3 runs in 6 2/3. On the other side, Walker Buehler scoreless over 6 innings. But those runs came in the top of the first, or the bottom of the first, as the Dodgers were the home team in Game 6. I was trying to keep that straight with the neutral site happening. But Seager, Turner, they both went yard, and L.A. with Buehler was able to make that 3-0 lead hold up for the rest of the 9 innings. And then that went to a decisive Game 7 Sunday night. And like I mentioned, what a game going back and forth. Ultimately, Atlanta gets up, and then late home runs from L.A., and they're able to win it on a bullpen game, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, May went 1 inning, Gonsolin went 2 innings, Teheran went 2 innings, Gratterall went an inning, and then Urias came out to close it with 3 innings late in the game. So it was almost as if it was backwards into what the Dodgers were doing there in the bullpen. And then the Braves, they went with Ian Anderson. He got hit around a bit, 3 innings, 2 runs. But then Matzik, Green, Minter, Martin, and Melanson through the rest of the game. But your loss ultimately going to Chris Martin, who gave up the home run to Bellinger in the bottom of the 7th. So your Atlanta Braves come up a game short from winning the National League pennant for the first time since 2000, early 2000s. Truly another good year in Atlanta, but still a disappointment going up against the Dodgers and having that 3-1 lead because, there are some questions heading into the offseason for Atlanta, like there were the Houston Astros. Kind of less high-level difficulty discussions. But looking at the contract here, Freddie Freeman is back for 1 more year before he is a free agent. I would find it very odd if they let Freddie Freeman reach the market, because he will be a top-paid guy. But he'll be entering his age 31 season. He's coming off an 8-year, $135 million deal. At $22 million, he is being underpaid currently when you're looking across the board. The National League MVP in my book ultimately should be upwards around $30-35 million a year. So he'll look to get a raise moving forward here in the near future. They then have, Travis d'Arnaud for 1 more year before he hits free agency. He's coming to the end of his deal. Darren O'Day for 1 more year. But the guys that they're losing this offseason and could potentially look to either re-sign or fill is Mark Melanson. He will be a free agent after wrapping up his 4-year, $62 million deal. He made $14 million last year, but he will test the market. Cole Hamels, really not getting anything going after signing there in free agency. He'll be age 37. Is he still a viable option after battling elbow and shoulder tightness for basically the entire regular season and postseason? I don't think he will be back in Atlanta, but I do think another team will give him a 1-year flyer to take a look on. The big one, however, Marcell Ozuna. Marcell bet on himself this past offseason. He wasn't getting the big-time dollars that he wanted, and then ultimately signed a 1-year, $18 million deal with the Braves. And again, he performed extremely well. And in the postseason, not as good of numbers as he had in the regular season, but he still hit .255, leading the team with 3 home runs and 11 RBIs. So still the top offensive weapon for the Atlanta Braves in the postseason, and one of them in the regular season along the standard cast and crew of Freeman, Acuna, Albies, all of those guys. So that's a middle-of-the-order right-handed power bat that Atlanta's had now 2 straight years that could potentially walk away. Last offseason, it was Josh Donaldson signing a big deal in Minnesota. They pretty much filled that void in the lineup with Ozuna, but now if somebody else is willing to give Ozuna the 4-year, $50 million deal that he could potentially be looking for. He's going to look for at least 20 a year. What am I talking about? He's looking for 480 since he signed for 18 and tore it up this year offensively. He's certainly going to be looking for a raise and ultimately a longer-term deal since he will only be 30 years old. So still in the prime of his career, still looking for an opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody goes 3-60 on Ozuna. That 4th year is probably a bit long, especially with him out there in left field if you're looking at a National League team. If you're an American League team that potentially will have an opening at designated hitter down the road, I think he becomes an even more attractive option for you moving forward. But Shane Green, who was traded to Atlanta, he'll be a free agent out of the bullpen. Nick Markakis will be a free agent next year. Tyler Flowers, Pablo Sandoval, Felix Hernandez. Now we're getting to the bottom of the barrel here in regards to a couple of guys who aren't with them or should be retiring very soon. So Atlanta this offseason, where do they go from here, right? What are we looking at moving forward? Honestly, it was kind of an interesting postseason for Atlanta because this was a team with the second best offense in the entire regular season, really being led by the bats, the arms. Hey, it's rookies, it's kids. Where are we going to go? How are they going to do? Well, they showed up and showed out in the postseason. I mean, Ian Anderson, 4 starts. He gave up 2 runs. Both of those came in Game 7 of the NLCS for the entire postseason in 18 innings. 2-0, a .96 ERA, so he'll be at the top of that rotation. Max Fried will be at the top of that rotation. He was 0-1 with a 3.04 ERA in the postseason. Kyle Wright will be at the top of that rotation. He struggled a bit during the playoffs, but hey, not every rookie's going to be able to go out there and completely shut guys down in the playoffs. And Kyle Wright learned that he has some things to work on. He has some opportunities to continue to improve, and he isn't exactly where he wants to be quite yet, but certainly a taste of the show, a taste of success, and that should drive him for this offseason. And then you continue down the list, Bryce Wilson. He was 1-0 with a 1.50 ERA in his one start in the playoffs, 6 innings, 1 run, 1 hit. AJ Minter, these guys, Shane Green, like I said, a pending free agent. He was a 1.50 ERA in 6 innings so far. Mark Melancon, he did not give up a run in 6 1/3 innings in the postseason. So basically the bullpen is where Atlanta's going to have to kind of revamp what they're looking for in 2021. Melancon's at the top of the list. Do you bring him back? Tyler Matzik, 1.04 ERA in 7 appearances, as well as 8 innings in the playoffs. Like I mentioned, Shane Green, low ERA. Chris Martin, 2.25. AJ Minter, 3.0. Will Smith, 4.5. Darren O'Day, he struggled in the playoffs, but has been consistent for them. So the pitching staff is very, very young in Atlanta, and this was part of the reason that they brought in Cole Hamels to potentially assist with this rotation, to kind of be that veteran steadying presence that carries you through a long, tumultuous regular season. And with only 60 games, with no off days in the postseason, this particular concern really didn't come up for the Braves. They didn't have any issues with a lot of the kids because the shortened season didn't allow for the kids to overextend. A lot of people have injury concerns as pitchers start to reach that 150, 175, 200 inning mark for the first time in their professional careers. And over 60 games, you didn't have to worry about that. So you could let them go out there every 5th day and continue to get in the flow and continue to grind. But next year, when it's the dog days of summer, getting into July, August, it's hot, it's game 101, 102, and your arm's dragging a bit. How do you maintain your level of success? How do you maintain your level of professionalism? How do you continue to go about your business and get things done when ultimately things start to drag? And that's where somebody like Cole Hamels can kind of show them through, the ropes and how to get through that and how to get through that wall. So I think they're going to add a veteran arm to kind of do that and be that guy for 2021, and then continue to work on the bullpen on the back end. Because if you're Atlanta, as an organization, you've shown the ability to draft, the ability to sign people in the international market with all of these different names and talented guys at the top of the roster. You've shown the ability to perform correctly as an organization, the ability to build through the draft and build through your scouting department and your international signing department and not have to spend huge dollars on top-tier free agents like the Phillies to make up for inefficiencies in other parts of the process. And this is where Atlanta sets themselves up for success, not only today, but into the future, because all of these kids, all these arms are only arbitration eligible, heck, maybe even pre-arbitration eligible, making big league minimum, which allows you to then put the resources into a guy like Marcell Ozuna, making $18 million for 1 year to potentially be your guy offensively. It's going to be a really interesting offseason just to see the complementary pieces that go into Atlanta, because that's basically what happened last offseason, was that they really learned that that bullpen was an area of concern and an area that they are going to, really need to put some energy, effort, and resources in to improve for 2020, and they did that, and things went well. So where is that for 2021? I think it will be the bullpen again. I don't think that process ever ends as a major league general manager. A lot of time guys in the bullpen can be very volatile, even year to year with performance. So a lot of times contracts, once you get past the arbitration, tend to be 1 to 2 years in length because of the volatility of the market and the fluctuations of performance. Nobody likes to tie themselves to an individual or to a player for longer than 2 to 3 years typically. You really have to be a top-end guy to get that 4th year, potentially 3rd year option style of contract that you're looking for. But can Austin Riley be the future at third base? I think that's a question that they're continuing to try to answer. He hit 178 in the postseason with 18 strikeouts and 45 at-bats. So striking out, let's see, that's probably 30% of the time, because not quite a third, but, more than, or let's see, what's my math? What did I just say? Austin Riley, 18 for 45. So half is 36, a third is more. Yeah, so it's 40%. Man, what am I talking about? He's real high there with the 18. Pache out and right took over after the injury. Freddie Freeman was excellent, and he had a home run taken away from him in Game 7. Mookie Betts went up and above the wall to bring a home run back. It was fascinating. Albies hit 277, and then Ronald Acuna hitting 217 with 1 home run and 3 RBIs. He was Ronald Acuna was a bit of a down year this year for him. I mean, where his career has been and where he finished in kind of an odd 2020, it's certainly something that, we can't hammer him for, but so we'll look for a bounce back year. I have the playoff stats in front of me. I'm trying to get regular season stats here, MLB.com, but they're not listening to me. They're in postseason mode. So, but that'll do it here for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. The Houston Astros sent home, the Atlanta Braves sent home, and now we have a World Series matchup of the first-place team in the American League, Tampa Bay Rays, against the first-place team in the National League, LA Dodgers. It's going to be a lot of fun. These two teams are the top 2 teams in baseball, so ultimately I'm looking forward to this. But stick around. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we'll get into our World Series preview. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Stick around, everybody.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. I appreciate you guys listening. What a fantastic weekend it was of baseball, but I know if you're like me out there, you were checking out a ton of the football games as well. I mean, we had an excellent football slate Saturday night, Georgia, Alabama. Alabama continued to roll. Florida State upset North Carolina. Top 5 team went down. And then Sunday on the gridiron, we had the NFL matchup. It was a fantastic Sunday. My Birds, the Eagles, ultimately fell to Baltimore, but we had an upset. Let's see, Denver over New England, and, we had Tampa hammer Green Bay. That was a big one that was going on down in South Florida. So if you want to hear more about the NFL, if you want to hear more about fantasy football, I myself, 3-2. Projected to win again this week to go to 4-2 on the year. Top scorer in my league, and yet still somehow 3-2. But that's besides the point. If you want to hear more football chatter, check out those podcasts. But we're diving into our World Series preview now here on the Baseball Podcast. And, of course, we touched on it. It's going to be Rays, Dodgers, and what is, the most fascinating kind of baseball thing that could happen is we had a short season. We had different rules, 3-batter minimum, designated hitter, runners on second during extra innings in the postseason. Then very late, we had expanded playoffs, neutral site games, no off days, just absolute craziness. And where did it leave us? The top team in the NL versus the top team in the AL. And it gets back to the conversation of the way the postseason was set up this year with no off days. It certainly played advantage to the best overall teams because of the way they had to set up the pitching, the bullpen, the offense. It played much more like the regular season than postseasons have of years past. And I've gotten into percentages of innings pitched and this, that, and a third. We're not going to do that here today. But once again, the top two teams during the regular season actually are the top two teams in the World Series because the game itself mirrored that of the regular season. But two different programs, I'll call them, since I'm a football type of guy. But the Dodgers, they're in their third World Series in 4 years. They have yet to win one, of course, everybody knows during that time. But this is the first time that stretch of World Series has happened since the Yankees in 2000 through 2003. The Phillies had a shot between 08 and 10, but could never get back after those two trips in 08, 09. The Astros were right there. They could potentially have done the same thing, ultimately falling short to the Rays. So Dodgers in the World Series 3 out of 4 years. And then this is the Rays' first World Series since 2008. So the other team hasn't been back in 12 years. And that 2008 team, I'm going to enjoy this over the next week, they lost to the Philadelphia Phillies, who, yes, let's go. Fighting Phils, the only one in my lifetime. But 2020, I guess, but 2020 is the better way to say that. So first time back in 12 years for the Rays and the Dodgers. They know exactly where to go. They're frequent flyers right now when it comes to the World Series. But two different styles of teams here, and I kind of want to break down these last couple of segments, not position by position, but kind of offense, defense, give my take on ultimately who I think has the advantage, and then we'll give you guys a prediction at the end because ALCS, I went Astros in 7. I was darn close even after being down 3-0, and then I went Dodgers in 6, where ultimately it took them 7 games, but I didn't look too good on that one. So I was feeling myself, and then down 3-1, down 3-0, before ultimately kind of kicking it back and respectability kicking in once again here. But for the World Series here, let's talk pitching and defense to start off. And starting out defensively, I mean, these two teams are, in my opinion, at least just visually, I don't have fielding percentages, team stats, none of that up here in front of me. I could try to do it, but honestly, navigating while talking with this computer I have at home really isn't the easiest. But these two teams are fantastic defensively. I mean, the reason the Rays beat the Astros in the ALCS, a big reason, I guess, maybe not the reason, but was that defense. There were plays where Jose Altuve throwing balls away. He struggled to throw to first the one game, couldn't turn the double play the next game. The Rays took advantage of this by getting that big base hit afterwards. And then on the flip side, they didn't give Houston any extra outs. And for a team's offense that was kind of flirting with, the success they had had previously and then being the team they were during the regular season, those defensive plays are huge to shut down momentum or shut down big innings, and Tampa was able to do that. But on the flip side, the Dodgers, Mookie Betts, he robbed another home run from from Freddie Freeman, like I touched on in Game 7, in a ballpark that he hasn't played in at all. I mean, it was just fascinating to see, right? So they're in Texas, brand new ballpark, Arlington. The Rangers are in the American League, so they played them, or I guess they did play them this year because they're in the West, so they would have been there. But normally they would not have been there. My goodness, I just talked myself out of a point due to the chaos that is 2020. But either way, he'd played there, 3-4 times, and to know the exact distance between the warning track and the wall and how many steps you can take before you have to leap and jump and go up and get it. It was awesome to watch, and he took it away, took it back, and it was just a fantastic play. But across the board, defenses. I mean, Seager at short, it's fun to watch these teams play, and that's where if we could go push on the defense, I think I would, but ultimately I'm going to go Tampa with a small advantage defensively. When it comes to just watching their games and seeing, ultimately how they work as a team, because it's fascinating to watch them play defense, especially after being a Phillies fan, because the Phillies did not play fantastic defense this year, and to see certain plays being made, certain, baseball intelligence plays being made, it was a ton of fun to watch. But let's transition now into the pitching staff on both sides of things. Looking at the starting rotation. Now, this is where the World Series will mimic 2019, 18, 17 when it comes to days and scheduling. So for the first time this offseason, there will be days off in between games. It will be the standard routine of 2 games, home team, day off, travel day typically, 3 games in a row, wherever they go. Off day, travel day, Game 6 and Game 7. So that will be the same schedule. Tuesday, Wednesday, off on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, off on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if necessary, of course. So that allows your bullpen to breathe a bit more, because both of these teams go in the distance in 7 games in 7 days. Yeah, things got pretty crazy. I mean, the Astros had multiple guys who had thrown 3 days in a row and weren't available for a Game 7. I mean, imagine it being a Game 7 ALCS and your arm just hanging on by the bare minimum, and you're like, Coach, I got maybe 5 pitches, 10 pitches in me, 1 out. I don't know. It's just, but there can't be a Game 7 if you don't win the Game 6. So you got to use the guys when they're available and when ultimately they're going to make a difference for you. But with off days after games 2, you can use a guy 2 days in a row, off day, 3 days in a row, off day, 2 days in a row, and you could potentially get 6 appearances in 7 games if you're one of those guys whose arms tend to bounce back sooner than later. But let's look at the pitching matchups here. The Rays come into Game 1 with 2 days off in between games. The Dodgers come in with 1 day off, having played on Sunday. I don't think that'll be a big deal regardless. 2 days, 1 day, momentum going either way. Obviously, the Dodgers come in having won 3 straight. The Rays coming in having lost 3 out of 4, but still winning the series. So the Dodgers are going to feel good going into Game 1, better more so than the Rays, who are going to play that steady as she goes kind of stabilization, good pitching, good defense, timely hitting is their style to win these opportunities, where the Dodgers, they just launch and load, and we'll get into that a bit more here in the 4th segment when we touch on the offenses. But the pitching matchups, Game 1, you're going to have Tyler Glasnow versus Walker Buehler in what should be a great matchup. Now, both of these guys here, Walker Buehler, his stat line reads much better than Tyler Glasnow. Buehler's 1-0 with a 1.89 ERA in 4 starts for the playoffs, 19 total innings, as opposed to Tyler Glasnow. He is 2-1 with a 4.46 ERA in 4 starts. Both of them have gone 19 innings. Buehler's given up 4 runs, and Glasnow's given up 10. So certainly it reads on paper to advantage LA Dodgers in Game 1. Them coming off of winning 3 in a row. I think the advantage goes that way for the first game. But then it kind of swings back and steadies itself for Game 2. Clayton Kershaw, numbers as a whole in the playoffs, 3 starts, 2-1, 3.32 ERA. But certainly his 1 start in the NLCS did not go very well. So he will be opposed by Blake Snell, who has been just okay in the playoffs. The Astros got to him a couple of times in the ALCS, but Snell 2-2 in 4 starts, 3.20 ERA across 19 innings. I'll give that one a toss-up. You would love to say advantage Kershaw, but as they continue to leave him out there just a bit too long, it seems, in every playoff start. I mean, against the Braves, he had gone 5 innings, I think gave up 1 run. Sit him down at that point, Dave. Take him out of the ball game. Let him feel good about himself. We know the history if you continued to ride the horse, and that's exactly what happened as Kershaw went out for the 6th inning, ran into trouble, and ultimately his line looked much, much worse than his first 5 innings were. In Game 3, you're going to get big game Charlie Morton from Tampa's side. He's 3-0 in 3 starts with a .57 ERA. He's only given up 1 run in 15 innings in the postseason. He would be opposed by probably Dustin May, who's had 3 starts. He's 1-0 with a 2.35 ERA in Game 3. You could potentially look at Julio Urias, who is 4-0 in 4 games total, 16 innings and 1 start, .56. I think you're looking at those guys potentially in Games 3 and 4. And then that's where Tampa, Game 4, it becomes an opener style of game. They have John Curtis with 1 start, Ryan Thompson with 1 start, and Ryan Yarborough with 1 start. So Yarborough would seem to be the name that you would put down there, but he hasn't thrown since the 13th of October, so it would be his first start in a couple of weeks in what could be a huge Game 4. And I think that starter kind of depends on where the games are to that point if you're Tampa. If you're up 2-1, 3-0, you're going Yarborough, but if you're down to 2-1, 3-0, I think you may look at some different names because then the starting pitchers reset themselves for Games 5, 6, and 7. Because if you have Glasnow going Game 1, then you get 2, off day 3, 4. You can throw Game 5 on normal rest if you're Glasnow or Buehler. And then the same can be said for Game 6 and 7 for your number 2 and number 3 starters. So I'm going Tampa, Glasnow, Snell, Morton, Yarborough, Glasnow, Snell, Morton. And then for LA, I'm going Buehler, Kershaw. Let's see here. May, Urias, Buehler, Kershaw, May for my 7 starters across the board. And looking at both teams' bullpens, they are both excellent as well. I mean, this is another conversation where LA on paper can hang right there with Tampa. Both teams kind of came in overusing their bullpens, but once again, no off days. They want to keep going to the top arms. That's going to happen in this particular style of postseason. I mean, let's see. Trey Aaron, 4.15 for the Dodgers. Gratterall, 4.76. Kenley Jansen, 3.38. Pedro Baez, 2.08. So some top names there really struggling with Gratterall and Jansen at the back end of the bullpen if you're LA. Jansen at one point was the closer. He has 2 saves, but they've also used Gratterall as the closer as he has a save. Joe Kelly also has a save in the postseason. But Tampa's side of things, of course, Nick Anderson, he's been utilized the most. He looked to be running out of a bit of gas there in Game 6 and 7, but was able to get the job done for them in the ALCS. He's thrown to a 4.63 ERA thus far in 7 games. Diego Castillo's been fantastic. 1.08 ERA. Fairbanks, 2.16. Aaron Loop has yet to give up a run in 3 innings, 5 appearances. But then we continue down the list here. Sledger's 1.80. Alvarado, 0.00. So both bullpens are deep. Both bullpens are, very good on paper, have excellent stuff. Joe Kelly throws hard. Urias, Florio, those guys are in the bullpen. May's been out of the bullpen. Gratterall, Jansen. So ultimately, that's a conversation going back and forth. So let's see here. If I had to kind of pick these 3 segments overall, I would say defensively, I'll give a small advantage to Tampa. Very, very close. LA is very good defensively. Rotation, I'm actually going to go Tampa just due to the depth of Morton, Snell, and Glasnow. I like the 3rd one there better than I like the 3rd of May or Urias or Gosselin on top of Kershaw and Buehler. Playoff Kershaw, I don't know. So I'm going to go slight advantage to Tampa again. And then bullpen-wise, I'm going push. Slight advantage Tampa. Again, 3 for 3, maybe slight advantage Tampa. I'm probably upsetting a lot of Dodgers fans listening to this out there, but on paper, that's kind of where I have it, defense and pitching-wise. But that'll wrap it up here for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Come back, stick around, everybody. We're going to wrap things up talking offense, talking preview, talking predictions. The World Series, only 24 hours away. Stick around, everybody. I'm Kevin Mahalik. We're coming right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It's Monday, October 19th. Hopefully everybody out there is enjoying a great Spooktober. Halloween coming at you fast and furious a couple weekends away. Everybody stay safe out there, trick-or-treating. Check your local listings. In regards to the recommendations there, I know certain places have shut it down, other places are suggesting alternatives, but certainly wishing you guys a safe and healthy Halloween season as things continue to progress out there. Of course, with chaos it seems going on in the country, only a couple of weeks away from Election Day, so make sure you register to vote, make sure you do go vote. I'm not going to get into anything more than that, but go vote, go register, do your thing. Do your thing. That's it. All right. So, fourth and final segment here, though. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. I appreciate you guys, as always. Do me a favor. If you haven't shared this with one of your friends, I know I yell at you to do that, but send a text, share a tweet, retweet. I don't know. Help us out. We certainly appreciate it as we continue to grow here, both within the baseball podcast and the podcast network. That goes a long way to helping us continue to produce and give you guys quality content day in and day out there. But fourth and final segment today, wrapping up our World Series preview. We got Dodgers and Rays. I touched on it. Defense, slight advantage Rays. Starters, slight advantage Rays. Bullpen, slight advantage Rays. And then we're going offense. Big advantage Dodgers, in my opinion. My goodness, just looking at this one on paper, it's really a conversation of can the Dodgers offense make up for the minuses that I've put together for the other three categories, because LA offensively, very impressive in this postseason. They've hit 16 home runs just in the NLCS alone. That was tied for the record for most during a 7-game series. And what was fascinating to watch in the 16th was the most important, with Cody Bellinger putting them ahead in Game 7 and putting it into the seats. But let's look at some individual statistics here, 1 through 9, in regards to guys who we could see in the lineup, starting off with Cody Bellinger. He's hitting .250, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs. He has 2 triples as well. So 5 of his 11 hits have gone for extra bases. He has struck out 14 times in 44 at-bats. So that's something that he'll look to cut down on in the World Series, try to shorten up a bit, put the ball in play. But if the situation presents itself to still get down and launch, he's got no problem doing that, as we saw late in Game 7 in what was a moonshot. Fun to watch, man. That was awesome. But Mookie Betts has been excellent when it comes to the average. He's hitting .311, 6 doubles, but has yet to leave the yard. He does not have any home runs currently in the postseason. That's a bit surprising, knowing Mookie's pop and Mookie's power. He tends to run one out of here every couple of games. So the fact that he's now gone 12 games and 45 at-bats without leaving the yard certainly is a surprise. Max Muncy, he's still trying to get things going. He still hits for pop, but the average is not there, striking out a ton. He's hitting .211. He does have 15 walks, which is extending the on-base percentage above 400. So a guy hitting .211, getting on base over 400% of the time, you'll take that out of your first baseman who's struggling any day of the week, because if he gets the bat going and can still take those pitches, you're looking at just a monster getting on base. Corey Seager from the shortstop spot, hitting .298, 6 home runs, 15 RBIs. He was named the MVP of the National League Championship Series. Good for Corey. He's been beat up a little bit throughout the course of his career, but he's having himself some success, and he'll look to transition that over into the World Series as well. Will Smith behind the dish, hitting .222, 1 home run, 11 RBIs. He's been good back there for the guys. Justin Turner down at third base, struggling a bit offensively, .209, 1 home run, 4 RBIs. Enrique Hernandez is struggling, but had a huge pinch hit home run in Game 7. So his last at-bat certainly feels good. He's going to feel good about himself transitioning into the World Series. So Hernandez hitting .222. A.J. Pollock struggling a bit, .229 out there in left field. And then the last couple of guys, Jock Peterson hitting .375, only 1 home run, 5 RBIs. And then Chris Taylor hitting .200. So the depth of the lineup there, like I said, Bellinger's performing, Betts is hitting for average, Corey Seager's doing it all, and then Jock Peterson filling in as well. So these guys are going to have to continue to get things going. We've seen Austin Barnes in 5 different games. He's only had 12 at-bats. Edwin Rios in 5 games at 12 at-bats. So it's that group of guys that's going to have to keep things going here for LA if they're looking to make up the difference for potentially the pitching staff. Because if you look at Tampa's offense, and this is where things kind of line up, they go a bit deeper when it comes to appearances, but at the top, Willy Adames just struggling at the shortstop position. Seager crushing the ball for the Dodgers, and Adames hitting .132 with no home runs and only 3 RBIs. He's 5 for 38. He's really struggling to get the bat going, and as one of their middle-of-the-order guys, they're going to need him to get things going in the World Series to have any chance. Brandon Lau is hitting .115 in the playoffs, 1 home run, 2 RBIs. Another guy struggling with the numbers. Kevin Kiermaier hitting .194 in 12 games. Austin Meadows is hitting .114 in 10 games. And Mike Zunino behind the dish hitting .216. Joey Wendell's hitting .225. I mean, this offense, this team, they were lucky to beat the Astros. My goodness, there were multiple games, even when they won those first 3, that if Jose Altuve can make a throw, make a bit of an adjustment, and Houston could walk out of there victorious, because the only guy hitting the ball and the only guy offensively really doing anything, and he was, of course, the American League Series Championship Series MVP, and that was Randy Arozarena. I mean, the guy has been absolutely on fire. He homered early in Game 7 to give them a lead in which they never relinquished or never looked back. He is hitting .382, 7 home runs, 10 RBIs so far in the playoffs. Man, 21 hits and 55 at-bats. And again, besides him, you got Ji-Man Choi hitting .290 with a couple of dingers in 12 games. I like G-Man down there at first base. I certainly would put him in the lineup a bit more. Manuel Margot, who hit 2 home runs in 1 game. He's hitting .256 with 5 shots. Zunino has the 4 homers, but a lot of the numbers and a lot of the averages are very low offensively for this team. And it's just, I mean, Meadows low, Adams, Adames all hitting below $150. It's going to be difficult for the Rays to really be able to turn things on and get past the Dodgers if this offense can't perform like it has, during the regular season. Because, again, I touched on it earlier, the Rays formula really is good pitching, good defense, and timely hitting. And the Dodgers just mash the baseball and eventually believe that they're going to defeat you. And ask the Atlanta Braves, who shut them down for 2.5 games to start the series before LA was able to get things rolling and really, put 11 runs up in the top of the first inning for the 1 game to get the offense going. But Game 7, they sputtered a little bit, but bigger picture, right? Is all the pressure on the Dodgers? I mean, they've won 8 straight division titles, 100 games in the last I will call it 3 years, because 104 in 2017, 106 in 2019, more than 70% this year. So, do that math across 162, but it would be over 100, certainly at the way they're looking at things. They were looking at potentially the best record ever in baseball, chasing down the Mariners of 01 and their 116 victories. But the Dodgers still don't have a World Series title since, I believe, 1988. And, they've been to the NLCS a handful of times in regards to, even when the Phillies were good, 07, 08, 09. It's been 2 decades here now where the Dodgers seem to be around every year and then get to this point and ultimately can't close. So is it going to be another year? Are we going to get another Clayton Kershaw story? I mean, the guy's got a 2.4 ERA, a couple of Cy Youngs, ERA titles, lock for the Hall of Fame. Then you go to the playoffs, and he's under 500 with an ERA in the mid-4s. If you go to the World Series, his ERA goes to the mid-5s. So what do I expect from Clayton Kershaw here in potentially 2 starts? Should it be closer to the 2.5 ERA or that he has in the regular season? Or should it be closer to the 5.5 ERA that he's shown in the World Series, or the 4.5 ERA that he has in the entire postseason? So there's questions there. And then if you're the Rays, a younger team, they haven't been here in 12 years, is the moment going to be too bright for the Tampa Bay Rays? It would be their first World Series in the history of the franchise. They've never won a World Series. And to compete in a division with the Yankees and the Red Sox, who have multiple pennants, World Series, all of that good stuff, to be able to show, hey, as a small market team in a division with these big, huge payroll behemoths, we're still able to get the job done and win a World Series, and not just, be competitive but never get it done in the playoffs or the postseason. It's a very similar narrative if you're a Rays fan than if you're a Dodgers fan, is, yeah, we're always there, but we never get it done because we never have that guy. We never have that one dude who we paid or who has the ability to get us up and over the top. And if Arozarena hits in the World Series like he did in the championship series, they may finally have that guy. I mean, this guy's the hottest hitter on the planet. He was acquired from the Cardinals in the offseason. He missed part of the year due to a COVID-19 test, so he didn't even debut really until the month of September. Hit 7 home runs in September. Again, 7 home runs here in the playoffs. Let's see, 4th player with at least 7 home runs before the World Series. Daniel Murphy, B.J. Upton, Carlos Beltran, the others to do it. So this kid really coming out of nowhere and a huge difference maker for the Rays. And honestly, without him, they don't win that ALCS. I mean, really offensively, they struggled tremendously. And without his home runs, without his, leadership offensively, Houston was going to beat them. And we would have had an under 500 team that's coming off a cheating scandal in the World Series going against the best team in a rematch with the LA Dodgers. But it's been fascinating to watch Arozarena and how he's really been able to carry this offense and potentially lead them to a World Series title. But who's going to be the MVP? I mean, Arozarena, he's got to be the guess offensively for the Rays. If you're looking at an arm, could it be Charlie Morton? Big Game Morton going at it once again? I mean, that guy's been fantastic in Game 7 after Game 7 after Game 7. But Glasnow's going to get a couple starts. Snell's going to get a couple of starts. Are you looking at the bullpen? Is it Fairbanks potentially? Yarborough coming out of the bullpen? If you're the Dodgers, is it going to be Mookie Betts, who's the MVP? Cody Bellinger? Let's see, Corey Seager, who was MVP of the NLCS, or are you going bullpen yourself? Kenley Jansen, Gratterall, or are you looking at Buehler, Kershaw from the starting pitching opportunity? So it'll be very interesting to see Buehler, Kershaw, Urias, May, Gosselin, kind of who they run out there in the middle of the game stretch there, games 3, 4, 5. What they go with rotationally, but it's going to be crazy. So let's break these down for you now here. Let's go game by game. We're looking at the starting pitching and who ultimately, which way are they going? All right, so I'll give you game by game. I've been pretty locked in for the playoffs here in regards to my predictions. Let's see. Game 1, Glasnow versus Buehler. I'm going to take Buehler and the LA Dodgers to continue their hot start. It would be their 4th victory in a row and loss 4 out of 5 for the Tampa Bay Rays. I have the Dodgers taking a quick 1-0 start. Then we're going Blake Snell, Clayton Kershaw. my default setting for Kershaw in the playoffs is one that's not good. So I'm going to go Blake Snell until Kershaw goes that 7-8 innings, only giving up 1 or 2 runs. I got to err on the side of that. Yeah, that's not going to happen, and he's going to continue to struggle. So I'm looking at Snell victorious, 1-1 series heading into 3-4-5. I love Charlie Morton in Game 3. I think Tampa takes a 2-1 win there. You go to Game 4. I like the Dodgers and their ability to bounce back. That pushes you back to 2-2 and resets the entire program from there, to which, again, I think 1 through 3 repeats itself. I really do. I think Buehler beats Glasnow. I think Snell beats Kershaw. And I think Morton beats whoever you're throwing out there. And I'm going to go Rays in 7. I mean, let's see here. So there's 2 ways this goes, right? Either the Dodgers offense really out-hits Tampa Bay, because if they get into any sort of shootout here, Tampa's not going to be able to stay with the Dodgers like Atlanta was from an offensive perspective. Tampa needs to win these games 4-2, 5-2. We saw it against the Astros, everything right around that 3-4-5 range. So if we're looking at an offensive shootout, this one's going to be Dodgers in 5. If that offense is able to hit, able to score 5, 6, 7 runs, it's going to be over quickly. It's going to be Dodgers. If the Rays pitching staff is able to find something against the Dodgers, keep them in check, and have a couple of these become pitching duels, then you get into a 5, 6, 7 game series. The longer it goes, the more pitching staffs are involved, the more the advantage pendulum swings towards the Rays, and I have them. So I either go Dodgers in 5 or Rays in 7, and my gut's telling me that it's 2020. This thing's going the distance. It's been crazy. We're going to see another fantastic series, and ultimately I have the Rays winning their first franchise World Series championship. And kudos to them. But either way, first one from 1988 or first one in franchise history, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys celebrate, because a weight will be lifted off of somebody's shoulders that will be gigantic. But let me know your predictions out there. Hit me up in the comments. Check me out on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Kevin Mahalik, KMiho20, KMIHO20. Or if you want to write in the comments, 5-star review, leave your take, who you think's going to win. I'm going to go Rays in 7, but part of me thinks it could be Dodgers in 5. So that does it for today's episode. I really appreciate you guys listening. Another week here, another week down. We continued to grind. It is October 19th. I'll talk to you guys once again on Thursday. Enjoy your week, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.